Welcome, everybody, to the Music Production Podcast. This is Brian Funk, aka AfroDJMac, and I'm here today with a special guest. I've got Eban Crawford, who makes music as Senator Jaiz. Welcome to the show, Eban.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
I'm very glad to have you. So, we've kind of been bouncing off each other a little bit from afar, and it's nice to get a chance to talk to you and find out what you're up to. It seems like a lot of interesting stuff going on your end of the world here.
Yeah, at this moment there is a little bit of action, so a little bit of action is always a good thing.
I imagine you're a bit busy on an event that's coming up shortly. A little event.
I am May 18th through 21st. I will be at Moogfest. I'll be there for the 4 days.
Nice.
I'll be running the No Permission Needed Create workshop there.
I already love the sound of that. No permission needed, because who wants permission to do things, right?
There's actually a story behind that name, because I was at Moogfest last year and ran a program there, another workshop, and back then I called it the 10-minute music station, which has really no imagination in it, whatever, but it was very descriptive. I take 3 to 5 people up, let them loose on Ableton Live, and teach them how to multi-track really quick, and we make like an 8 or a 16-bar loop on the spot at Moogfest. So to teach the multi-tracking. And so I started to take that workshop to other places. I took it to, one of the places I took it to was NC State for the Great Animal Orchestra, and I was presenting that outside the orchestra. And I also had a DJ station that I created for the Museum of Natural Sciences here in Raleigh, and it's called Mammal Music. It was part of our Extreme Mammals exhibit, and what that was is I had a box and I put a Novation Launchpad in it, and I had an iPad in there, and I filled the space. If you don't know what the Novation Launchpad is, it's just a 64 pad grid based music loop launching item, and I filled it up with some piano music, some bass, some rhythms, and then the rest of it I filled it up with natural sounds and animal sounds, which I did auto-tune to see. So animals have been auto-tuned now.
Nice.
And it was basically a children's DJ station where kids would come up at the museum and they would make music with that, combining the music clips I put in with all the animal sounds and everything. So I brought that to NC State as well. And the kids, I say kids, the young adults at NC State loved it. They were having a blast with it. The people that were there to watch the orchestra, it's a Raleigh Civic Orchestra, they were having a great time with it. But the performers from the orchestra came out as well. And these are people that in their sleep are better musicians than I am. These are classically trained orchestral musicians. They are amazing. And they had absolutely no idea what to do with mammal music. This little DJ station I made for kids, I even had one that kind of put her hands up to her mouth and kind of shook a little bit because she's like, I don't know. So I'm like, okay, let's start a drum beat. And I hit a drum beat, and then she turned the drum beat off. I'm like, okay, well, let's go at this another way. Let's try a melody here. And she just turned the melody off, and then she walked away. And that happened to me with more than one of the performers. And it hit me that I was misusing the 10-minute music station, and I changed it to No Permission Needed Create. And since then I've taken it to a couple of high schools, and I really want to get in front of the band kids because I'm all for music education. I'm a self-taught musician, but even now I'm taking courses to kind of fill in the gaps of what I don't know because I wasn't a classically trained musician. But I want to get in front of those kids before they get it drummed into them that music has rules. And that's where the name of it came from. It's when you have classically trained musicians there that don't realize that you can use the bow and your fingers on your violin or your cello any way you want. If you're performing a piece, of course you have to follow the sheet music, but when you're not, you can do whatever you want. You just be crazy with it, because it was kind of sad to see these great musicians that I know that there's creativity in them. There's creativity in all of us, but they didn't feel like they could create.
I've had that experience with people, and it happened really in high school with some people that were band musicians, and I'm not a band musician. I was a kid in high school playing guitar, and really as obsessed with music as I was and my friends were, we didn't have any real outlet at the school, except for maybe like the couple times a year we could play at the school. At maybe like a recreation night or the talent show or something like that. But when I would get together with a lot of trained musicians, without the music in front of them, they kind of didn't know what to do. They could be phenomenal musicians, but when there's nothing to look at, it was hard sometimes. Even with recording, if I had somebody that I want, maybe this person play the violin or the trumpet, without that notation, they didn't know what to do. I found myself trying to write out notation at one point, and I don't really read music. I was just translating it, like as if I had like a English to, Japanese dictionary or something. And the musicians that I found that were able to do that, though, were the ones in the jazz band. They were cool. They knew they could figure it out.
Well, jazz is about as unstructured and free form as you're going to get. So
yeah, no permission there.
Yeah, none at all.
So that's a funny thing because you've almost set it up where it's kind of foolproof. Even, your animal noises are auto-tuned. And
yeah.
It's just so hard to know what to do.
Yeah, it's so going back to the Novation Launchpad, when using the iPad app, it has the bottom two rows are effects, and then it's six pads to each row. So I had 6 piano pieces, 6 bass pieces, and 6 drum pieces. Every one of them worked with each other. Every loop, I made every loop to work with it. I did it in Ableton. So, it's like literally I was just pulling the loops out. After I created them in Ableton, I was just pulling them off. So everything worked together. Once I auto-tuned the animals to C, you could not hit something wrong.
Right.
And it's not really music creation. It really is just like a DJ station. I don't really know if we have a term for it. Controllerism, I guess. Controllerism DJing, I guess. And like I say, I made it for kids. And it really, for that was a little bit more shocking than I thought it would be that these amazing musicians had that take. So that's why, I'm going to be getting it to a few more high schools here in the next couple of months. And, I just feel that's the direction that this has to go.
I think that's a great idea because it's very easy to get caught up in the rules. And when there are no rules, what do you do, right? And if you've been doing something by following instructions forever, then you have no instructions because there's no right answer in music, right? Unless you have it written down. There's
exactly.
The right answer.
Yeah.
But if it's not written down, there's no right answer. I think I got lucky when I was younger in playing guitar by kind of realizing that I can ignore the rules. I was taking guitar lessons. I was learning some theory. And I was showing the stuff to one of my good friends down the street because I wanted somebody to play guitar solos over. So I would show him like some power chords. And, he didn't know the theory. He just knew if I put my fingers here, there, and there, then he's doing 12-bar blues or whatever. And he would come back the next day and doing things you weren't supposed to do. He was playing a power chord, but like bending it, like you don't really do that. Or you would go like out of the major scale or the pentatonic scale or whatever. No idea he was doing it. He was just feeling it. And I would kind of be watching, being like, that's not right, but it sounds cool. And I got kind of interested in that whole world of like when it's okay to break the rules and why does that work, which I still don't understand really, but there's a magic to it.
I have this one song. It was off of my second release. One of the projects I'm working on is with Dr. Roland Case. He's the head of our biodiversity lab at the museum. I have a couple of projects going with him, but one of them is he has this lecture. It's called the Eastern Coyote. And it has a tagline to it, but I cannot remember the tagline. But the talk basically goes into how the Eastern Coyote has used wolves and dogs to help keep their population at a certain level when there was nothing else to mate with. So it's a very entertaining talk. And our idea is that I was going to perform a live soundtrack under it, which basically makes it Nat Geo live at that point. You've got the speaker, you've got the visuals. Now you have a soundtrack going to it. It's a live documentary. And we took that to NC State. And before the show, I always just have my tracks playing before we take the stage. And after the show, this student came up to me and had this little grin. Could tell he wanted to talk to me, but he was a little nervous. And so he started talking. He's like, that music before the show, that's your stuff, right? And I'm like, yes. And I knew at that point what he was going to say, because he then said he was a music major, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. So the song, when I wrote the song, I did the bass line and I did the melody completely separate in two separate locations. I had my computer with me one day. I didn't have the right file. I didn't have Splice at the time. So I wrote the two parts separate, and I forgot that I wrote one in C harmonic minor, and I did the bass in E. The melody was in C harmonic minor. Basically, when I put it together, the pieces should not have fit together. But happen chance, luck of the draw, whatever, it did. It worked, and I didn't change a thing. So this kid, he came up, and he's has that grin on his face. He's like, that one song that long winter fireside, or nice winter fireside. Sorry. And he says, I noticed that the melody was in C or C minor, but it sounded like the bass is in E. Now I have to tell you right now that this kid had this superpower to hear that. I wrote the song. I can't even hear it. I cannot. I don't have that superpower to hear, oh, that's in C or that's in E. I'm the guy that has to sit there on a keyboard and hit the notes and listening to it until I figure out what it is.
Yeah,
right?
I figure out a lot of my music before I play it.
Yeah. And so I'm like, we talked a little bit. He wasn't being weird. He just wanted to know why I did that. And I told him, well, first off, it was an accident. It's nothing that I planned on doing. It's just my memory being what it is. I forgot that I had wrote one way and did the other. And I told him, when I put it together, it's like, you don't have to be right if it works. For whatever reason, it worked. It shouldn't have worked. But that's a good example there of, he was having a real hard time wrapping his head around it, and probably because if he had an assignment to come up with a composition and turn that into his instructor or the band director or something, he probably would have failed, because you do not do this. You don't. Those scales are not compatible. But hey, it worked.
It's funny. It's always a mystery to me when those things happen, and there's a magic, and when it happens without really being able to notice is really nice. When it becomes fluid, I wonder if that superpower of being able to tell that one thing's in harmonic minor and the other's in E major, if that's maybe more of a curse in some levels. Like when you listen to music, does it prevent you from enjoying it on the same level? I know
ignorance
for me,
is bliss.
Yeah, I mean, I know sometimes for myself, I can get a little snobby if I recognize like a simple chord progression. And I might say, oh, that's that chord progression. It's in every song. Or, you think 1, 4, 5, big deal. And it just, and it's, how many times have I been proven wrong, but it's an amazing song and it's the same chords. I mean, countless. But there is that part of me, and then when I'm playing my guitar, if I start stumbling across those chords, sometimes I'll decide I need to change it for no reason other than because it's that kind of commonplace thing.
Right. Complexity for complexity's sake. Sometimes it happens, it's like, but music at its best is when it's just raw and guttural. It's just there. It's, no matter what style, I mean, we look back at like Beethoven and Mozart and Chopin, and these are the great masters. These are to aspire to. Some of those guys were considered punk back in the day. Some of the ideas they were throwing out back in the day were as radical as some of the experimental stuff we have now. When looking back on it, we all look at that as the benchmark for classical music, but some of that stuff was scandalous when it was released in its time, So you always want to push the limits a little bit, but and have fun and keep it simple, make it complex, whatever. It's music. It's there for your soul and your ears.
Yeah, I took a course in college. I wasn't really musically educated, but whenever I could get an elective that would be music, I would take it. I took a Bach course and talked a lot about his whole collection of pieces, the Well-Tempered Clavier, where he takes I guess now I might mess this up when I speak about it. So if anyone's listening, here's your chance.
Music snobs, tune out right now.
Here you go, guys.
Come back in 10 minutes.
But like where they used to tune to what they call mean tone, where all of the notes were not mathematically apart necessarily, I believe, in an equal spacing. Whereas now the music we listen to, everything's equally spaced. A C to a C sharp is a half step is always a half step. So that particular collection of pieces was one of the first times anyone ever really did that. in the equal tempering, where each note's equal, and he did it in like every key, I believe. And to hear the teacher like explain how that was, as you said, I think he said like a punk rock thing to do. We're like, Bach? Scratching our head. Punk, we're like thinking Bach, Sid Vicious,
Yeah.
Joey Ramone, like, well, wait, really?
Well, there's a video now, and it's on YouTube, and you can search it out, and it's James Taylor. And it's very much what you're just talking about, because James Taylor, he uses a guitar tuner that shows the synths. So it shows the micro tunings, right? And he has a tuning for the guitar that he says works out better than the guitar, because as a guitarist, you know that there are some inherent problems with the tuning of a guitar. Even when it's in tune, certain fingerings and things, it's just the guitar doesn't fit exactly perfect. But he has this thing where he does just micro tunings with synths, and he says that it makes for a much more natural sounding guitar. So it's an interesting video. I've never done it, because when I'm tuning my guitar, I'm perfectly happy with a normally tuned guitar. I don't really need to get into tuning it down like 2 cents, and this, that, and the other, the little micro tunings. But it is an interesting video, and he claims that it makes for a much more natural sounding tuning.
That's interesting. So he's slightly off with like each string, I guess he's doing
he's slightly off. He's what we consider the standard tuning. He has micro tuned it off of that.
That's fascinating. There are certain kinds of guitars, and I know my brother-in-law, if he hears this, he's going to be mad at me for not remembering what they're called. They have a fretboard where I'm going to have to almost like do this with my hands visually so you can see, where the frets are kind of like angled. They're like almost fanned out across the fret. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about.
Do you know what that's called?
I do not know what it's called.
So instead of like normally the frets are parallel to each other, and instead now it almost looks like it's like a 3D perspective drawing with the frets.
Right.
And his buddy has an 8-string guitar, which I find very excessive. but when you play it, it's surprisingly easy to play. It's something about the way your hand bends and the shape. And I guess when you start getting a fretboard wide enough for 8 strings, that really starts to make a difference. But I think it has something to do with the intonation too.
Well, that would make sense. Talking about like superpowers, like that kid had the superpower where he can hear what I was doing on the 2 separate parts. It's in lore that Eddie Van Halen in interviews talks about sometimes in the middle of a song, he'll tune to a chord. Again, superpowers that I just do not possess. So he's by ear tuning to a chord because it's just not perfect enough for him. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's, when I'm playing a song, I'm having a good enough time of it just getting the song right. I really don't feel that I could, in the middle of it, just tune to a chord, which I guess you'd have to detune out of the chord when you go to your next chord. I really don't know, but I read that in an interview one time, and I thought, at the same time, I thought that is so cool. And at the same time, that's kind of excessive. Because nobody in the audience knows the difference. At a concert, you can't even tell what's being played half the time. Right. It's all about the energy, and it's rock and roll, and David Lee Roth is up there, so nobody's actually really paying that much attention to that chord, man.
I think maybe Van Halen had a little mystique purposely built into his, history.
Yeah,
I think I remember reading something like where he said he never practiced, and. He used to like turn around to the crowd when he'd do certain things, the finger tapping or whatever. He would not really let people see what he was doing, which I think he later came out and said, "No, I used to sit on my bed for like 8 hours a day and practice guitar."
That story makes a little more sense.
It does,
yeah.
But there's something kind of fun about like the rock star that was struck by lightning and has these superpowers that he got directly from the devil or something.
Yeah. This stuff just comes to me.
Yeah, this stuff writes itself.
Yeah.
I got to check out that James Taylor video. That sounds pretty cool. At least for, not that I ever want to get into that, but just a little understanding would be neat. I find myself with, synths these days, virtual synths really, that they're so perfectly in tune all the time that I'm often just detuning them and messing things up on purpose to just get that kind of nice, real feeling, organic, human.
A lot of your packs are based around that concept. The VCR pack and all, is getting the, youngsters today don't realize what it was like back in the day. I got into music and I started playing guitar. I was an old school punk. But because I loved punk rock, but at the same time, I loved Gary Newman and I loved Massive Attack and I loved Aphex Twin and all that. But the problem was back in the day, you couldn't get a software program that comes prepackaged with fourth synthesizers in it. Back in the day, if you wanted a DX7, you were going to drop like $3,000. If you wanted an EMU Emulator 2 sampler, which had this grand thing of like 1 whole second of sampling power, that was going to cost you about $5,500. If you wanted to get like the Fairlight, that was $25,000. So of course, guitar though, I was in band when I was really young, and due to the fact that I didn't know at the time, but I actually have a couple of learning disabilities, and I could never ever play with the music. I'd look and it would just so I quit band. And I had this saxophone, and I went to Hoffman's Music Store in Thibodaux, Louisiana, and I traded it in for a Feinen acoustic guitar. This is a guitar that was made in Japan, and it was imported by some guy named Feinen in Indiana for 3 years in the 1970s. And that was my first guitar. And at that time, this was so this was like 1983, I believe, when I got the guitar. And yeah, those were the prices. So if you couldn't go and get a Casio with 100 sounds in it for like you can like for $99 at Target now. Back then it was really expensive. So I played guitar. It wasn't until later till I got into electronic music. But that's a long way away from what I was going to start saying, is that people don't realize what those early analog synths, they were beasts. You never would ever get the same sound out of it twice. And keeping those things in tune was like, it was almost like playing a Fender Stratocaster with the actual standard tremolo, arm. It's like it's gonna go out of tune, and it's gonna go out of tune while you're using it, and you've got to tame that thing because now that everything's digital, everything is almost perfect.
Yeah, it is. It's super perfect. And I the first analog synth I ever got was the Moog Slim Fatty. So I'm late to the game. I wasn't getting those old school anything. So but that thing needed to warm up, and I was like, what? What is this about? You gotta leave it on for like 20 minutes before it's in tune. And I didn't know that. It was just surprise. And it's so funny that to me that I'm finding that all of the things I used to try so hard to fight against, like being in tune, being in time, are the things that I'm now purposely injecting into the music, almost like artificially, just to recreate that kind of. It's so odd that I finally got everything I wanted. Every dream I ever had, every sound I ever needed, and now here I am. I'm like, trying to get back to the old way.
Yeah, never satisfied, and people are never satisfied, man.
Yeah,
you always got to have the next thing that you don't have now. So if it's clean, let's make it dirty. If it's dirty, let's make it clean. It's just human nature. But it injects interest. Digital music, and I say digital music rather than electronic music because I don't want to differentiate against the styles. Any kind of music you make now in the digital age, it can be so sterile. So it's almost an imperative that you've got to find some way to inject glitches and imperfections are humanity. That's the human side of it. Like in Ableton, putting grooves on beats or something, just to get a little swing into things so it doesn't sound so perfect. Because it's amazing when things are perfect, it could be beautiful, but for whatever reason, I find that it's boring and my ear tends to reject perfection.
Yeah,
but putting a little bit of grit into it, then it becomes interesting again, And of course, being a fan of like Aphex Twin and things like that helps also because there's a lot of dirt in that stuff, But
right.
It's a fine distinction between a good song and a great song. Maybe the good song is just a little too sterile. The great song is the one that has, some thump to it, or lack of a better term, a little grit in there,
Yeah, I guess the personality comes through, the humanity, the character. It starts to happen like when I always loved in recordings when you could kind of hear something that maybe you weren't supposed to hear. Maybe it was like someone kind of yelling in the, backing track, the scratch track or something.
The first Filter album, I remember in an interview that they were giving that they were recording that it was a bedroom recording. The first Filter album was a bedroom recording.
No,
and in one of the songs, and I've never heard it, but they've said it, so it could be a Mystique thing or whatever. They said the toilet was running next in the room next door. The next room was a bathroom, and they got the toilet running on the track, but it worked. So whatever track that was, they can hear it, of course, because they were there. I mean, I've gone through and listened to that whole thing, and I never really heard a toilet running in the background. But they were there, so they probably hear it every time. But they left it in because for whatever reason, it worked with the track. And there's your new pack, toilet running.
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Could you flush again? I didn't get enough there.
Yeah, we're gonna have to change the mic placement. It's just not enough bass in that. Yeah, there's like I forget, maybe it was like True Love Waits, Radiohead, old recording of it, where supposedly like the background noise you're hearing is his wife doing dishes while he's at the piano, and I
love stories like that. That kind of stuff makes my day.
It does, and I think maybe this was when I was talking to Jason Timothy. We mentioned him, I think, before we started officially talking here on the show. I think it was him that said it, that like so much of what we like about the artists and the music is sort of the mystique and story that goes along with it, where just that visual of Tom York at a piano in this like really intimate time where it's not necessarily like I'm in the studio and the red recording light is on and we're gonna get it perfect, but like it's so kind of relaxed that it doesn't matter that his wife's doing the dishes in the background. It takes you there. You're in a place all of a sudden, and there's a life to the song.
Matter. Yeah, the mystique, the story, you're inviting these people into your life with their music, and it's nice to know that they're living their life too. There's dishes being done here, darn it.
Oh, Tom York does dishes.
Yeah,
Wow.
Other people, they perform with a drummer and a bass player,
Yeah. It's funny too, because I just watched this like mini documentary about this artist from LA called Nash, I guess is how you say his name. He's a young kid, Gnash. And
I saw that one. His dad built his in the garage, right?
Yeah. It was on I saw it from the Recording Revolution website.
That's where I saw it too. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, our little circle of people here.
Yeah, Graham, right? He's always got some cool stuff. I love his kind of ethos of you don't need super fancy stuff to make good music. It's just nice to hear.
Yeah.
But he had that documentary on, and I'm not sure. And I was listening to Nash on Apple Music on the way home today and on the way to work, and I'm listening to it, and I'm really enjoying it. But I'm not positive I would like it as much if I didn't see that documentary first, because at times it's super poppy, and at times it's super raw. And it's like a distant piano, just a couple chords, and he's just kind of singing, rapping over it. I don't know if it's something I would normally like, but I'm like really digging on it. And seeing his documentary, where you get like his story and this whole idea that like you said, his dad built his studio in the garage, and they said his dad lost his job and they were going to have to move unless he came up with money. So Nash goes out and like makes money doing music and buys the house, and it's just like such a great story. And to see like that like kind of openness and love that they had with each other, it's really endearing, and you like almost listen for the story when you listen to the song. Like really interesting.
It's also nice to know that some people can actually find success in the music industry without having a messed up life.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
that's such a great
It's like
point.
generally people that get into music, it's like, man, this is compensating for something that went horribly wrong or is still going horribly wrong. And my angst, I'm going to get it out through music. But this guy is saving the family house. He's writing music in a studio his dad built him, actually has support. I'm like, yeah, so you can actually come at this from a happy place.
Yeah, it's not the abusive, horrible, terrible child. That it's actually no. My dad loves me and he supports me in my work, and it's kind of like the anti-hero,
Almost
anti-hero.
makes it seem too easy. Yeah. 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 It's like, God, so he just needed to make money and he went and did it. Wow, I need some of that special sauce.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's kind of a big motivator when you have that sort of gun to your head kind of deal where you have to act or else that's when you sort of rise to the occasion.
Guess so. But yeah, it is a great story, and yeah, it does add to the mystique, and it fits right into the narrative that we have going here that, sometimes the story makes the music more interesting.
Yeah, I know it. I mean, I'm listening to it, and he says there's like a song where he says like, my dad says love is always blah blah blah, and I'm like, I picture his dad and like this like warm relationship they had, and it was just cool that you're like now you're in his world, and it's something more than just songs. I guess maybe like that's a big thing we need to do these days with music as the market, but the world of music is so saturated. It's such it's another way to get through. It fits some kind of little niche there somewhere.
Niche is a big word, is a big important word these days because you're right. The what is it? It's called the democratization of technology. Or anybody that wants to make music now has absolutely no excuse to not make music now.
You don't even need to be a musician.
Exactly. And it's funny you say that because for a little while there, that inner snobbishness of me, it's like, man, I got my guitar at 13, man. It's like it was like the year before Foreigner came out with the album 4, and they had Guitar Store Hero or something like that on it. I'm like, that's my story. I went and got a cheap guitar, man, and learn how to play it, and so for a while there, I did let that get to me that people can get a computer and you don't even have to play into it. You can get on the piano roll, or you can just get loops, and you're an arranger at that point, and then your music has as much weight on the market as mine does, maybe even more, because you probably make stuff that people that's not as compartmentalized as what I do or something. And for a while that got to me. Then I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm happy that people are making it. I'm happy that people are making music. And it doesn't matter that there's saturation out there because nobody's making any money anyway because of streaming. So, it's like, I mean, if somebody wants to make something, go for it. Being a musician over the past 10 years has really dramatically changed the way I look at the world. It's made me a lot more open because I was there for a while, that person that, I don't know, I guess I believed in a zero-sum game, but it's not a zero-sum game. Anybody can get in, and everybody that wants to get in should get in, and say, welcome them with open arms. My stuff isn't doing any worse or better because somebody else released something. Yeah. So let them have their go. And if they want to do loop-based stuff, let them do loop-based stuff. I'm not here to judge that person's music,
Yeah, I've been through that. The inner guitar snob, the guy that spent all those years learning guitar, practicing, struggling, bleeding fingers. That guy is a little
Jukebox
upset.
Hero. Sorry, it just hit me. Jukebox Hero was the name of the song by Foreigner, not Guitar Store Hero. Jukebox Hero. Sorry, didn't mean. I wanted to get that out. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that guy that did all that practicing in me sometimes was a little angry at the computer music movement. Like, I don't even play an instrument. That's maybe the get off my lawn old man guy. Also, kind of.
There's that meme where it says how music is made, and it's an open laptop and it has one button. It says "Make Music."
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a great little Family Guy clip. I wish I could do it justice right now, but where it's recent, where Peter like becomes a DJ, and the guy, the owner of the club, is like, "Oh, you've been playing the same loop for 12 hours. this is great. And it's just like, you're a big douchebag, and that's perfect, and you got everything you need. The like simplification of it is funny. I mean, obviously, it's not that simple, obviously.
Yeah.
But there is that part of me, like you said, that it almost seems unfair.
Yeah. Well, with the DJ culture, I had to get over that these people that were up there just spinning pre-made tracks were pulling in thousands of people to shows and things like that. That's another thing I had to let go of, because it is a performance. I mean, I DJ 2 or 3 times a year. I'm not really a DJ. My first album that I wrote when I came back to music after podcasting and things, about 4 years ago, I still have trouble listening to that, because that was at about the time when the DJ culture was first starting to get to that popularity that it has right now. Mm-hmm. And I made that album a little dancey, and that's not me. And whenever you do something that is not you, then the end product is never going to be that great. And but that was the thing. I was like, I can do what they do, and I shouldn't even thought like that. But so that's another thing. You had to come to terms with it. It's like, music is different things to different people. So the DJ culture is what it is. I know what was it? Dead Mouse made all kind of waves when he went into Rolling Stone and said anybody can DJ that can count to 4 or something like that. We all press
play, I think he said.
Yeah, we all press play.
Yeah.
If you can count to 4, you can DJ.
Yeah, that fired up the comments on any site that was on.
Well, I think it's a very well known fact that he is a professional troll. So he says things to get those rises out of that rise out of people. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's maybe part of his success. Who knows? But
it's his mistake.
He has an interesting thing going on too, and you see all his ads maybe for his masterclass now.
Yeah.
If you are visiting the same sites I am, it probably comes up on your YouTube all the time.
But it's kind of funny because I have taken a masterclass. I didn't take Dead Mouse's masterclass. I took Hans Zimmer's.
Okay, cool.
When I saw that Hans Zimmer had one, I'm like, this is something I have got to check out. And I have to admit, there is something so calming about his German accent when he's talking about music. Yeah. I actually almost just got lost in Hans Zimmer. I don't know that I actually really learned anything. I was just mesmerized listening to his cadence and his laid back tone, and I was like I had more fun with that just listening to Hans Zimmer than I actually I actually have to go back and probably rewatch the whole thing to actually learn something now.
That's funny. Well, he apparently tore it up at what's it called? Just last weekend, I think it was. Was it Coachella? I think he was. Yeah.
He was up there playing, and it's like that's one of the things that when I say that I am not the world's greatest musician, I'm not being humble. I have a thing where I don't really like to practice, because whenever I sit down in front of my keyboards, or I get the push in front of me, or I get my guitar, I have this urge. I'm gonna learn this song. And next thing I know, I'm writing new music. So it's like I don't really have that practice gene in me. So it's like whenever I have an instrument in my hands, I'm creating. But in his masterclass, he kept putting out the fact that he's not the greatest performer, or he's going to try to play this piece he wrote on the piano. And of course, he's playing it elegantly. He's playing it beautiful. But, so he has that false modesty thing going. Because I saw a couple of those videos from Coachella. He's got it going on. He's not one of those guys that says, I'm not really the greatest musician. And no, come on, Hans. Let's be a little honest about this. All right, man.
Well, it could be that very attitude that's given him his success, to never sort of settle.
This is true.
But I'm with you on that. Practicing sometimes is hard, because I think all of my toys, my guitars, drums, synths, they're more tools for me. It's not, I guess as a guitar player, I mean, certain guitarists, yes, but I was never really too impressed by just, wow, listen how great this guy is on guitar. This person plays guitar amazingly. And some of those acts that are just sort of known for, wow, super guitar, never.
The Yngwies, the Marty Friedmans, the Tony McAlpines, and all. Don't get me wrong; those guys are amazing musicians. Sure. But I have never been able to sit down and listen to one of thetheir albums all the way through. Put some Stones on or something after a while. Put some Sex Pistols on. Let's listen to some Black Flag. Because I mean, it's like at some point, it's it just my ear becomes numb to. It goes into that, it's so perfect and it's so fast and it's so technical, but they're not writing songs. They're literally just playing leads for entire 5-minute stretches,
Yeah. I mean, if I want to sit and like hear someone really shred, yeah, it's cool, but I'm not going to listen to it. But someone like Jimi Hendrix, I think, is a different case, where he's really a songwriter. He's writing good melodies. He's doing lots of interesting tonal things,
Right.
and it's a different kind of mastery, I guess, of the instrument.
Yeah, definitely. I one of my favorite guitarists, not punk, but I mean, is Richie Blackmore, and mainly because of things. He didn't play by any rules either, or he wasn't playing by the same rules as everybody else. He wasn't playing the blues box. He wasn't playing blues based things. Mm-hmm. He was really some of the stuff where he did where he mirrored John Lord's organ on some of those songs. I can plot it out on the keyboard. I'm like, okay, well, that was easy on the keyboard. Then I look at the guitar and I'm like, that's almost impossible on the guitar. And he was totally just jamming with John Lord, just keeping right up there with him. And it's kind of funny because I think Richie Blackmore has said that he was a big respecter of Hendrix. It's kind of I like the rule breakers. I like the guys that go out there and do it a little different. Because I mean, you get 10 guitarists in a room. You say, hey, pop out a solo. 9 of them are going to go straight to the blues box. Mm-hmm. They're just going to play in the box, and that's perfectly fine. But then that one guy is the one that doesn't know you're not supposed to hit those other notes. he's gonna really launch it.
Yeah, I mean, I always loved Kurt Cobain as a guitar player, and he gets he doesn't always get a lot of credit, but he's like a different kind of guitar player. He's a tonal player. His sounds are really fascinating, and his control of his feedback is incredible. Like not everyone can do that, and he had a really nice. I mean, I love his guitar sounds still. I don't think anyone will say he's like gonna shred or anything, but it fit the song, I guess. And that for me was like what I'm looking for.
Well, I had a person ask me one time, it was about Eddie Van Halen, and a friend of mine was playing Eruption, and another person came up to me and says, you guys are always talking about Eddie Van Halen being such a great guitarist and all that, but I mean, I don't consider him a good guitarist at all, and he's playing Eruption. How can that be? And I'm like, yeah, but he didn't write it. He didn't originate it, and that's kind of like what Kurt Cobain. He was doing his own thing. Yeah. Every now and then those guys come around and do their own thing, but then you have to live for 10 years of everybody doing that thing, because then, it's kind of that situation, and then somebody's going to come out and do something new again. And, everybody's going to jump on that, it's like
something old again. It's new.
Yeah. That almost started a fight between my friend and the guy that came up and asked the question, because he totally heard that I don't consider him a good guitarist line. So,
Yeah. He's playing Eruption. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, to put that together is a different story.
Yeah.
There's I guess a lot of different places and reasons to listen to music. So, you can listen to it for just the sheer appreciation of a musician.
Yeah.
Or the emotional impact of a song, or because you like the sounds.
Or all of the above.
I guess
music is my time capsule. When I'm in a certain mood or something, a song will take me back to the time period that it was created at.
Yes.
Or created in. So it's a time capsule. It's a mood stabilizer. It's sometimes it's a motivator. It's great. I mean, Alan Parsons Project, what's that? Cirrus is called. I mean, come on. Every time you hear that at the NBA game, you actually don't want the game to start. You just want them to go with that Cirrus line for why is that so short, man? That was the best part of the game right there. The players running into Cirrus playing,
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it takes me to the moment where either I heard the song or it had some impact on me. There's certain memories that just get inextricably tied to that song, and they're just one. What you hear one, and there you are.
I saw a movie. I can't remember what it was. Maybe this may jog your memory. It was a little older, but it was music. There were music snobs in it. I don't know if it was about music snobs because I can't remember the movie. But the guy was deeply into vinyl, and he was asked how does he arrange it, by name, or he's like, no, I arrange it by year. Well, I guess it takes all types. So
yeah, that's an interesting way to do it, I guess.
Yeah, that would take a little bit too much research and memory for me.
Yeah, well, I haven't even gotten around to organizing records by name, artist, alphabetized, nothing. They're just all shoved on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. And in the world as it is, kids today, they're if they're listening, they have no idea what we're talking about because everything's on the computer. Are you talking about a playlist?
Yeah.
No, back in the day, we actually had these physical things that played music, and we had phones with rotors on it and all kind of crazy, wacky stuff back in the day.
I always bring in records to school, especially towards the end of the year. Usually my students are writing their final portfolios or gathering their favorite work that they've done throughout the year, and they have to come up with a theme, and the theme could just be like, senior year or something, but some theme that connects the pieces. And I always bring records in to show them, like, I pick records with themes to them. And it's fun to show them records and like, hey, it's on here. You just put this thing and look, I'll turn off the speakers and you can still hear it if you get close enough. And it's fun to let them, some kids, when they see that, their just mind is blown.
Yeah. You hear that warm feeling that, or you get that warmness to this. That's called analog, children.
The analog discussion doesn't usually work.
Yeah.
They're just like, it sounds noisy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does. You're right.
Yeah. We call it
true.
charm. You call it noise.
Yeah. It sounds like it's broken. I wanted to ask you a bit about the sound design stuff you do for the museum. I mean, you mentioned a little bit auto-tuning animals, the Great Animal Orchestra, Mammal music. I mean, there's so many things you hit on that I wanted to hear more about, but there was so much more interesting stuff coming out at the same time.
Well, yeah, the museum is the luckiest thing that ever happened to me, because being a musician in today's climate means that I have to have a day job. I know that you know this feeling too. And I happen to fall into a job that I get to do a lot of what I do in my day-to-day with music, but I get to do it for the museum. So I'm the audio engineer of the museum. So I run all of our live events, the audio for our live events and things like that, the auditorium and things. But the more fun part of the job is I get to work on designing audio exhibits. I also soundtrack the museum's videos and other media properties. And I also get to work with the scientists. Mammal music was my biggest hit. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because if you look at the music I release as Senator Jaiz, there's a certain little level of popularity there, but it's never going to be. I hope it does become super popular. I'm not going to go that it's never going to be super popular. But I mean, I make music for the love of making music. I'm not doing it because of the success that has come from it, I mean, it gets me in the Moog Fest. It gets me, but, there's definitely a them and then us kind of thing with music. But when I'm thinking about the museum, in the time that Mammal music was open, Extreme Mammals exhibit was open and Mammal music is there, and you take the videos that I create scores for there, and you took the events where my music plays a part in our events and things. We had a gala where I wrote an entire suite that was performed in the museum by a cirque troupe. You look at all that, and it's crazy because it's a good feeling inside. But I mean, all I get paid for that is my museum salary, and nobody knows my name because I do it in the name of the museum as an employee for the museum. But there's that little thing in the back of my head that's like, last year your music in one shape, one form or another got listened to by over 1 million people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that, they don't know who I am unless, of course, I walk up to them. I'm Eban Crawford, man. I work here. I also produce a Senator Jazz. That stuff you're listening to, that's me. But that instantly gets you labeled as a creep.
Yeah.
It's like, does your ego need any more stroking, son? So, but the things I'm doing with Dr. Roland Kays, that is. Well, I've already talked about the Eastern Coyote lecture where I perform a live soundtrack to the lecture. So that's fun. That's more just a performance. The other thing I'm doing with him, and I kind of took the name from the great Animal Orchestra from NC State when I was there. Well, I'm calling it, he doesn't like it when I call it this, but I'm calling it the Great Egret Orchestra. Because one of the things that one of his research topics is they tagged an egret in Nags Head, North Carolina. And this egret, they watched it for over a year. But in one night, it flew from Nags Head to New York. It was, so, and it was where the tag that it has on is a 3-axis accelerometer. So it measures up as Y, side to side as X, and Z is speed, I believe. Not 100% sure on that. All I know is that Dr. Roland Kays gives me these graphs of the movement from the accelerometers. So what I do is I take that and I assign, in a piano roll, I assign a note and a length to every bit of that graph. It's tedious, but it's fun. And so I'm building an orchestra that is composed of the movement of an egret, and it's broken into 4 parts. We have resting, we have walking and striking, we have migrating, which is the high energy part. That's when it made it to New York in one night. And then the last part is incubating. So I'm taking all that raw data, turning it into notes, putting the notes into Ableton, and we're making a suite of music off of this egret's movements.
That's incredible. So this is almost like a couple interesting things. It's almost, in a way, generative music, in that the egret is generating a lot of decisions. And it's also, I imagine, like, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast and with people all the time, that we have so many options when we're being creative. And this is a way that you are being limited by the choices the animal is making.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
There is a little bit of an ego part in this, though, because to flesh it out, I say to flesh it out, but really it's just because I do want some of my print on this. I am putting some additional orchestration on top of it just to kind of make the movements work a little better or whatever. But the main actual parts of the music is literally whatever this egret felt like doing at that moment is now being turned into music.
That's pretty cool. I think that's a fun way to work. I mean, not that I've done it, but I think that sounds like a cool thing, where you get these kind of like guides to follow thanks to the bird.
Yeah. It's it does butt up against those same problems that I had when I first tried to get into school band, that whenever I am faced with having to look at figures, or I had to devise my own music notation for this to make it work. And sometimes the biggest missteps I've made is that in looking at it, sometimes I just get lost, and then I won't realize I lost it for a few hours. Once I actually lost a whole week of work. I had to go back and but that's the challenges of doing something like this, because there's a lot of raw data there that has to be converted from a graph into music. So he's going to present that in Germany later this year. So that'll be really interesting. Another one of my coworkers, Eric Nisley, is creating a 3D egret figure. And then one of our labs at the museum is going to take that 3D figure and doing stuff that I have no idea how they do it. So I'm not even going to try to explain it. They're going to animate the bird to do exactly what the music is showing the bird doing.
Wow.
So they'll have a visual aspect of the bird, of this 3D animated egret doing whatever the music is having it do at that point.
That's cool. Some kind of meta craziness going on there.
Yeah, yeah. What they're doing, I call that voodoo. So,
Yeah.
I'll handle my part. I'm the musician of the bunch, so I'll handle my part. You guys, you go do whatever kind of crazy stuff you have to.
I wonder if there's some kind of possibility for like a Max for Live patch that can read these graphs and like according to your direction choose the notes for you and blend that out a little bit to eliminate some of that tedium.
That would make it so much easier. Now there are programs out there, and actually there is one for Max for Live that works with video movement and things like that. I saw it on what is that YouTuber? I think his last name is Wong, Andrew Wong, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And but he says they're not releasing it to the public because it has to be used in a bigger it has a lot more pieces than just the part that they're doing. But I've noticed, I did research on the web. There are a lot of programs right now that will take a picture and turn that picture into music, but it's not like what I'm doing with the graph. It's some kind of an interpretation thing of colors and shapes and things like that. So, Roland really wants a standard where, I'm just basically taking the graph and turning that into music. But if somebody were to want to write that and send it to me and has a little bit more knowledge, hit me up and let me have it. I would be glad to give you credit for this because it's a tedious process.
That'd be a good one, right? So if you're listening, programmers, we got a job for you.
Yeah. And you'll get credit. That's all that's the pay right there. Credit.
Yeah. And maybe the show credits at the museum or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's cool. So what a fascinating way to make music, to follow the flight path of a bird. I can't believe they're going from Nag's Head to New York. That's, what's that, like an 11-hour drive?
Yeah, it's
that's like the Outer Banks, isn't it?
Yeah, whenever yeah, you're right. Yeah, whenever Roland talks about this, and I always bring up that this bird flew from Nag's Head to New York, and he just that doesn't even faze him. It's not even part of his reality that's impressive. It's
what they do.
It's different minds coming together. It's like the parts that are interesting to him are the parts that I have absolutely no. I don't care. That's the parts that interest him as a scientist. The whole physical feat of flying that far in one night, that's of no consequence, other than it did it. And we have data from it. The data is what's important.
Yeah, incredible. You never know what the birds are doing. There are.
it really wanted a slice of pizza.
Yeah, right. They got the best pizza up there.
Yeah,
that's right. Come to New York. It's true. Well, we had in our old place, there's these ducks that would come back every single spring, and it was the same ducks. And I know it was the same ducks. They'd come and they'd sit in the pool with the pool cover on. And the reason I know it was the same ducks because one year they came and the female duck was limping all weird and it had a broken leg. So my father, who has an incredibly huge heart for animals, caught the duck with a net and, realizing this duck's not going to survive, with this broken leg, caught the duck, siliconed a cast or something to the leg, got it in place, fixed the leg up, and the duck next year, sure enough, came back and it had the cast on still.
Wow.
And it was that same duck, and like they just know this is where we hang out.
That's cool on multiple levels. A, helping the duck. A, the duck. B, the duck came back. But C, the engineering of that cast was amazing.
Oh yeah,
it survived.
Yeah, he can do anything. I'm pretty convinced.
Yeah.
But they have like on the bay here, the osprey. They all show up. They've built like man-made spots for them to land, and they show up and meet their partners. So I guess they're partner birds. They're like monogamous relationships they have, and they'll fly away for the winter or whatever, and the two birds arrive on the same day and they meet back up. So they go separate ways and not the same day they're back, and it's just
they must have amazing stories for each other.
we could barely work that out with like cell phones and everything. And
yeah,
how are they doing that? Incredible.
see that we need to pay more attention to them.
Yeah, someone's got to write some music for them.
Yes, definitely.
Let's get some soundtrack. That sounds like a great way for you to scratch the musical itch while you're at work in interesting ways, new projects that maybe push you into directions you'd never go before.
That is definitely true, and it's the most amazing part of the project of Roland, the Great Egret Orchestra, is how musical some of it is. Some of it is a cacophony of random sounds, but every now and then it locks into a groove, and it's like, wow, we're getting some amazing passages here. It's like, I guess I would liken that to, I don't know, a randomizer of sorts. This bird is my randomizer. That's the Max for Live plugin. It's an egret. It's a randomizer of tones.
Now,
no matter what I want it to go, it's going to go where it wants to.
When you write out those notes, when you graph them out, are you confining yourself to any sort of scale, or is it just however it winds up?
Well, I will actually give away all of the secrets that I am using on
if
the
I'm
Great
asking
Egret
you
Orchestra.
too much.
No. Actually, I'm doing this in the most pedestrian way possible, in that I tried so many ways of taking that graph and making it into music. What I finally fell on is I get the graph, which does have some guidelines on it. I get that graph and I blow it up to the point where I can see individual peaks and valleys and all that. And then the first thing I did is I came up with a size requirement for note length. So I know at this peak right there is an eighth note, and then this peak's a little bigger, so that one is going to be a quarter, and so I have my note size down. Then what I did is I took I did a screen capture of an 88 note piano roll, just the piano part on the end, right? And I actually have that as a guide in Photoshop, which I can move along to each individual note, and I'm plotting the notes out where they fall on the keyboard.
Wow.
Yeah, so that it's not. I told Roland when we went into it that definitely what the lab is doing with the animation and what we're doing with the 3D with the 3D model, that's hard. That's the hard science part of this. I have to approach this as an artist because I'm not a scientist. The part that I'm coming up with is the art part, and it has to be open to interpretation. So the best way, but I did have to standardize it. So that was the one thing. Even though it's art, I had to standardize it. And the best way I could think of is just put the graph in Photoshop, put the piano roll on it, and then use the notes where they fall.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's and he was down with that. That's really cool, because he could have been like, that's not scientific enough. We have to find another way. But that was standardized enough for him that will work for this project. So that's how I'm coming up with the notes for the Egret Orchestra.
How long are those pieces?
Well, we have enough data that I could make a year-long piece. So what I'm doing is
I'm need that patch, Max for Live.
I'm doing it in chunks, and then I find the chunks that work the best.
Yeah.
And we're gonna end up making this into a 4-minute piece, 1 minute for each section, which would be, like I said, it's resting, then walking and striking, then migrating, and then incubating. And incubating is the one that Roland is really interested in, and this is so weird because the way that they had the thing tagged, the location it's on, when in incubation, of course, it sits on the egg and then it gets up while its partner comes and sits on the egg. So since I have X, Y, Z, and I put a different instrument on each axis in the incubating part, when it's sitting on the egg, the X and Y, X is above Y. So X is higher in tones and Y is the lower tones. But when it gets up and goes about its life, that inverts, and it inverts in an X. So then now the high notes are the Y and the low notes are X. And it actually makes for this really interesting because I believe I have piano on, I have X as a piano and I have Y as a cello. So it's cello's low, piano's high, and then it kind of crosses in an X, and now the piano's low and the cello is the high notes. And it makes really interesting things. You'd probably have to hear it to appreciate it. But, it's like this bird is really taking his conductor duties, conducting the orchestra really, really seriously. It's like, now invert, you will be low, you will be high. I decree this. And it does that several times. So that's an actual interesting part. Z, it just does what it wants, because Z is irrelevant there, because Z, I think, is the speed. So it's not really moving very fast while it's laying on eggs. So
if that bird only knew.
Yes.
Only definitely knew. I wonder if anyone's doing that to us right now. Somewhere far, far away.
Yes. It wouldn't surprise me.
I'm gonna have to go more places or speed around or something. I'll run around the block later just to make an interesting passage for that being that's conducting that track.
In a couple of years, it's like, and this is the great AfroDJMac orchestra.
Yeah.
Didn't play on it. He just gave us the notes.
This part is when he was sleeping. Not very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's some cool work. I love the idea that you can just, because finding inspiration when doing music, doing art, finding the inspiration sometimes is a really tricky part, but sometimes you can just tap into something that just sets you off, and now you've got all that data and all that stuff to work with.
Well, there are some parts like talking about the incubation thing. There's something really beautiful about that inversion that happens. But that's something that I would never have thought about. So you will be seeing a Senator Jaiz song in the future where I have instruments inverting somewhere down the line, but in a more musical way. Notes that actually make sense together, not just a bird's movements.
Well, you got me thinking that a lot of times, and this might be the result of the way I work in Ableton Live, because when I do my live set, I set up 8 tracks that I'm going to use that might have clips on it. And I'll start on track 1 is usually drums, then there's track 2 is percussion, then there's bass on track 3. And then I kind of arrange the instruments from there on the remaining tracks from lowest pitch to highest pitch. So it's kind of left is lowest stuff and all the way to the right, track 8 is the highest stuff. And it's sort of maybe made me kind of keep certain sounds within a certain register. So where my cello in your example would just kind of stay maybe somewhere in the low mids, just above the bass, and not travel up higher and mingle with some of the other sounds. And it's a convenient way to work as far as mixing goes, because when you start EQing things, you can carve out its little spot in the mix. But maybe it's a little spot for a little personal innovation to think about. Traveling out of those little comfort zones, maybe we'll call them. That sit in.
Here's an actual problem that I ran into with that portion of it. And we were talking about cellos. So the cello that I was using is the orchestral samples from Ableton in Simpler. But you only get the actual range of the instrument in those samples. If you go above the range or below the range, you don't get notes anymore.
Yeah.
So to make that portion work, I actually had to go with a synth cello, because then there's no limitation on the upper or lower end of the sounds.
Yeah.
Because using the actual cello samples that are available from Ableton, there is a cutoff that it won't go higher, and there's a cutoff that it won't go lower. And that's the same on their violins, their bass, all the instruments, because you really only get the actual tonal range of that instrument on those samples. Right. So whereas I used the actual cello sample on the other 3 parts, on that part I had to go find an adequate cello synth. Mm-hmm. So a little anecdote there of challenges of trying to write music with bird notes.
Well, that bird has got to be a little more respectful of the range of your instrumentation.
Exactly. It's like, how dare you?
You can't fly there.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you could go inside the sampler, the simpler, and convert it to sampler, and then stretch out those last notes and give a crazy time stretching, but it might take away from the natural sounding, of the instrument.
if it was 100% my project, I could probably get away with something like that. But I've got to keep the other fellows that are working on this project too in mind on this one. So I gotta keep those mad scientists, to use a term to be like them, the mad scientist tendencies in check a little bit.
So were you saying that you also kind of play some music with some of the scientists?
No, not like in a band format or anything. That the closest is that I perform with Roland when he's doing his lecture and things along that line. But we do have. If you want to find a pool of creative people, go work in a museum, or in my case, a natural science museum. I don't know if a history museum would have the same level of creativity, but everybody is an artist or an illustrator or a musician or a writer, and this is all outside of their duties at the museum. So it's very nice place just looking at it like that. That there's so much talent and creativity in there that goes above and beyond just the science parts.
That is cool, because there's usually a division between the arts and the sciences, where everything in the science is technical. There's no emotional thing. It's just the data speaks and the experiments and the scientific method. And it's very much, I think, a lot of times at odds with creativity. Well, but it's nice to see it come together like that.
Dr. Roland Kays, who I'm working with on the Great Eagle Orchestra, and I do with the Eastern Coyote Lecture. One of his pastimes is he is one of the world's best and has won competitions off mountain unicyclists. You know how some people will take a mountain bike and go on hit the trails? He does that on a unicycle. There are videos on YouTube. If you look up Roland Kays, unicycle, you can see him actually traversing trails and hopping up on logs and things, all on his unicycle.
That is cool.
So it's a quirky, eclectic bunch that I work with.
Yeah, for real. I mean, even just anyone riding a unicycle these days is a little on the fringes.
Yeah, where would you even buy a unicycle? They don't have shops, It's like
I haven't seen a unicycle shop lately.
And he has a mountain unicycle, and his kid's mountain unicycle too. I'm like, so, here's a thing that I didn't even realize really existed anymore, the unicycle. And yet you have a mountain unicycle.
A specialized version.
Yes. I can walk on just flat pavement and fall down sometimes. And somehow you on one wheel can go up a mountain trail. What is up with that?
Amazing. Sounds like an interesting person.
Very much so.
Great. Well, it's got to be really nice to be around people like that, and for your own creativity and just the enjoyment of work too, but just to have that constant supply of inspiration.
Yes, it's a great place. I work with some great people. We are a public facility, and being right across from the legislature, that's where the only real stress comes from. Those that control us,
Fun juxtaposition, the science in front of the legislator, the museum.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
So as you get ready for Moogfest, so you said last year you had it called the 10-minute music station?
Right.
So which almost is like a rule, kind of. You have permission to be here for 10 minutes?
Well, it's funny because I came up with that name, and the name actually meant nothing because, of course, some people came up and they get a little timid and lose interest almost instantly. And then some people were coming out with some really amazing stuff. And, of course, we'd sit there until it was done. It was 10 minutes actually had no bearing in anything.
Gong.
No gong, nothing like that. And I got in last year in the back door. So I came up with the 10-minute music station very fast because Moogfest had heard about Mammal music. We were getting a little bit of press about Mammal music being part of the exhibit, and they wanted Mammal music. And so when they came to me and they wanted Mammal music, and I'm like, of course I'll bring Mammal music to Moogfest, but it's just an installation, so I wouldn't have been there with it. It's like, I tell you what, I have this workshop, and I actually made the workshop up as I was talking to her on the phone. Lorna Rose Simpson, the most amazing person in the world. Love her to death. She's the lady that got me into she's the person that got me into Moogfest last year. She works with Moogfest. And I'm pitching her as I'm making it up. So There wasn't a lot of thought in it. It's like
that kind of goes with the theme. in a lot of
Exactly.
ways.
So we got into Moogfest. And last year I did it with my partner, Christina, musical partner, Christina, not my wife. My wife is Effie, but, and she actually works at the museum as well. So we presented there last year, but this year, I had a lot more thoughts. So when I pitched Lorna Rose Simpson again, I pitched her the full filled out version with the new name, and she liked it. Unfortunately, Christina will not be with me this year, but for good reason. She's actually going to be playing a music festival in Mexico while Moogfest is happening. So that's why I'm bringing in Michael Herron this year to be my partner from a little closer to your neck in the woods up there. He's out from New York City. He's done some great stuff off Broadway, the Animal Show, Tentative Armor. He's taking that on tour. I think just after Moogfest, he's taking the Animal Show on tour. He plays piano for Sandra Bernhardt. Mm-hmm. So, he's interesting. So he's going to come fly down, and he's going to be my partner for Moogfest this year.
That's cool. Yeah, and speaking of our small world, I've had some interaction with him too. Just through this community of people making music. So I might have to talk to him too. Maybe I'll get the after show briefing. On his end.
Well, I do have to say that when I texted him and said, "Hey, guess whose podcast I'm going to be on?" He was a little jealous. He's like, "I like that. That guy is legit." So there you go. You are
little
legit.
Does he know? Maybe I shouldn't speak to him.
Nah. He's an incredibly interesting fellow.
Yeah, he is, and I follow him now and see his work.
He falls into that group of people that can play music better than me in their sleep. So he's a damn good musician.
Yeah. That's cool. That's great that you guys are working together and to do this.
Well, we met each other in 2005 through podcasting. He had started the Mikey Pod, and then that was about the time that I got hired, or should I say, got under contract to Mevio. So it was actually podcasting that brought us together back in the day. And we've never met in person. We've known each other since 2005.
So this will be the first time?
First time we meet. Ooh. I'm throwing him right into the fire. He shows up, we go to Moogfest.
All right, buddy. We're doing this.
Yes.
That's great. That's going to be a cool experience, I'm sure.
Oh, Moogfest is amazing.
Yeah, I'd like to get down to that at some point, sometime soon. A little tricky sometimes with the schedule, but yeah.
I do have an anecdote about Moogfest last year. Okay, so Rolling Stone did an article on Moogfest last year. And being Rolling Stone, it was snarky as all get out, right? Because, Moogfest has these high ideals of future thought and futurism and this, that, and the other. And they were nitpicking every individual thing they said, like, how is this future? How is that? And if you know anything about Rolling Stone, you know that in the band's active time, they never gave Led Zeppelin a good review.
Uh-huh.
That's the lore of Rolling Stone. They never gave Led Zeppelin. In hindsight, of course, they treat Led Zeppelin like the music gods that they are.
100 best records, yeah.
Right. But in the day, when they were actually releasing the records, Rolling Stone did not give them very good reviews. So one of the things that was in the Rolling Stone article about Moogfest last year was mammal music. So let's put some animal sounds in a sequencer and call it future. So I am now in the presence of greatness. I have been trashed by Rolling Stone magazine. My children's DJ station with animal sounds got trashed by Rolling Stone. So I'm in good company.
Yeah, so that means in 25 years or so, some of the most innovative music of the 21st century. Mammal music. Mammal music. That little kid's DJ station is going to be big time. Yeah, that's hysterical. So just because they're the ones writing the reviews doesn't mean they're the ones making the calls on what lasts and what has an impact.
This is true.
I didn't know that though. That is a cool anecdote. I like that.
They were really. I have to backtrack on that. I don't know if it was every single Led Zeppelin release that they gave bad reviews to, but they were not very friendly to Led Zeppelin back in the day when they were releasing tunes.
Yeah.
I bet you they were still asking for handouts of tickets when they came into town, though.
Yeah. What a show that would have been.
I totally hated your album when I reviewed it, but man, can I please have a pass? And that's the voice I hear them saying it in too.
A little bit snooty.
Plays.
So that's cool. Any expectations that by changing the name you'll get? Well, let me ask you this too. Are there many differences besides the name change? And do you think that just because, like, I love the title, No Permission Needed. It's so welcoming. It's so inviting. And sometimes I think people are scared of making music. And when I do an after school music production thing with students, and when I show them Push and all those light up buttons, of course they want to touch it, but they're so used to being told, don't touch, hands off, so that they're like a little scared and timid, and then once they start, then they're in. I'm wondering if you think that you'll see much of a difference just by the title.
That I may. It's important, though, that the structure of what we're going to do is very similar to last year. It's more of a shift on how I'm presenting. It's an ideological shift. Mm-hmm. Whereas last year, it was like, come on up, let's make some music. This time, it's much more of a, this is your tune. You're going to lead this. You're going to do this. Right. And Michael Heron coming down, we're looking into adding found music. Again, no, we're not sticking to 10 minutes. So his idea is to split the groups up and take some groups out with a recorder and getting found sounds of Moogfest and coming back in dropping that into the music. So we're going to go for all-out creativity this year. And it's kind of funny, because last year people love the Push. People do. They see the Push. They're like, oh my God, it's like a spaceship, Uh-huh. But I had this one lady, and she was putting in a bass part, I believe, and I had the Push set to C scale. That way, if somebody wanted to use the keyboard instead of the Push, which some people wanted to use the keyboard, I'm like, just hit the white keys and you can't hit a wrong note, right? So, so I had Push. And so the lady's playing, and then for some unknown reason, she starts playing with the smaller buttons on top that changed the parameters, and then she started hitting the buttons on the side. I'm like, those don't do anything. Please. I had to fix my template after that because I had no idea what she did. I didn't know which parameters she changed, but she broke it. I mean, not broke it, but she broke my template. I had to go in. I couldn't fix it, so I had to actually reload an earlier version of the template, take the music of that one had created out, and then resave the template to get back up and running again. So that's an interesting thing that can happen when you let people go on the Push. It's like, okay, you see the white and blue buttons? Go to town on those. You see everything else? Don't touch those. Don't touch it. Don't turn that rotary knob up there. Don't do that. No, hands off. But she got me real good. That was about 10 minutes out of the program right there.
I've done that to myself. I've started tweaking to the point of no return. Undo is no longer an option, and where you got all right. Better go back.
The great stuff there, though. It's like
good to save different versions every once in a while.
And then somebody hears it and they're like, can you explain that? You know what? No.
Magic.
I really can't explain it. I'm not being a jerk. I just really don't know what happened. It's sort of like my song where that kid came up and wanted to know why I would write a song in two separate keys. It's like, because I'm an idiot, because I can't remember something as simple as I did that in C harmonic minor. It's just me.
Yeah, it's the happy accident.
Yeah, don't question
it. A lot of great thing has come because of the happy accident.
It all falls apart under questioning, so stop.
Yeah. So how's the work with Senator Jaiz going? Let's see, we've got this single coming up. I see the video I was watching just a few minutes ago. It's all outer space.
Oh, star stuff. Yeah. So I had an idea late last year for my next album, and the album is going to be called Sounds from a Beautiful Dystopia.
Okay, I like that.
And I told people that that's going to be the name of my new album, and immediately with the election that we had in place at that time, everybody started to think, oh, you're going political. Sounds of a Beautiful Dystopia have nothing to do with our election or our new president or anything like that.
Right.
This album is a soundtrack to a movie that's never been made. It's my Blade Runner soundtrack.
Okay, cool.
And since I'm not a filmmaker, I'm a musician. I can only fulfill half of this, So that's the long and short of it. Now, I've been taking my time with it, and I didn't realize at the time that I was going to get back into Moogfest this year. Once I got back into Moogfest, I'm like, wow, I really need to get some stuff out there. So the stuff that I've completed, I've actually put out 3 singles from the album already. The album that's not complete, So I'm releasing stuff as singles just to get them out there. And either I will get the time before Moogfest, or then once Moogfest pass, I will flesh out the rest of it and then put it out as a collection. But as of right now, and I'm going to try to get a couple of more tracks out, maybe not from the album because I'm kind of just putting that stuff out as it is. But so that's the big Senator Jaiz project right now, and I'm also putting together an audio visual performance. It's an improv performance. I know you're big on iPad apps for creation of music. I'm huge on that. As a matter of fact, I have a couple of tracks in Ableton that I have what's called the Focusrite iTrack dock, which is basically it turns the iPad into a full functioning DAW as it is. It's an audio interface for the iPad. But I put my iPad on that and I route it as
one, the IO dock.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't work with my current iPad anymore, but it was pretty cool. The
30 pin to lightning shift really mucked up a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Apple. So I play a lot of the instruments on my iPad into Ableton as audio. But there's this one app that if anybody really wants to have some fun and check it out, it's called Coyote. And that's Takate. And what this is...
Okay. Write it down. I'll put it in the show notes.
So it's a grid based. It looks almost too simple. At first, it looks like a grid based thing. It looks like it would be the Launchpad app or something. But you notice that that it has an eyeball and a speaker on it. Well, if you're on the speaker, then you're in the audio section. If the eyeball, though, you have a full audio show as well because you can drop movies in there. In the movies, you can have all kind of effects on them. You can automate the effects, and there's all kind of. And in the audio side, you can have clips, but you can also have instruments. You can have drums. You can have sequencers. So you put your sounds into it. But then it's a performance. At that point, it's a performance system. So it's great for improving. You can play the parts out on the synths. You can, and everything is granular. All the synths on it are granular based. So you get your sound, put your sound in, make your grains, and so that's how you do the synthesis on it. But you have unlimited slots, and a slot can be an instrument, it can be a sound, it can be a drum, it can be a loop. It can actually be a whole song. It can be anything. And you can control it with an on-screen keyboard. You can control it with a sequencer. You can control it through automation. And you have all of that at your fingertips, and it's all real time. So I'm creating a show with that right now that I'm going to actually try to take to art galleries and things like that. I guess it could work in a club environment, but it'd have to be an experimental night at the club or something like that, But I'm looking to get that more into like artistic spaces and things like that. One thing that I guess I always knew it existed, but I didn't really get the power of it until Moogfest last year was the durational concerts, whereas you get one artist and that artist just plays for 4 hours.
Oh yeah,
and the thing is, though, those were so experimental, and because 4 hours, and a lot of it was improv, and that really kind of like got in my head wanting to be in that space. And then when I got the Coyote app, I'm like, this is my vehicle to do it. And here's the great thing: if you want to take it, it is oh god, what is it called in live? The thing that it syncs up the beats. Through
the warp markers, or
no, the new technology they came out with
Link?
Like the last Link. It's Link enabled. That's what it is. I don't know why that was not in my head. So actually, what I'm doing with that, I can actually use Link, and I can actually perform through Ableton, which would take everything to another level. Actually, it probably would do me better to do most of the audio in Ableton. Just use Coyote for transitions, and then do all of the video stuff in Coyote. That way I don't have to, you can see the wheels are spinning right now, but I'm developing that right now. So
that's really cool. And Are you where are you getting your video? Are you making footage, or are you just
Well,
grabbing things and messing with it?
speaking of apps, there's an app for the iPhone called Cinematic. It's made by the people that were behind that app Hipstamatic back in the day. That's kind of been overshadowed now by
Yeah. Yeah.
Instagram and stuff. But Cinematic, what it's really cool is it lets you take up movies up to a minute. But then it has all these amazing filters, right? So you can screw with things right off the bat. And that is the perfect thing for me so far to make movies. Because I mean, generally you don't want to put full length films into Getty. So I grab them in Cinematic, put these amazing filters on it, and then they're already ready. They're already in a surreal state. So when I start putting the effects in Takete on them, it like takes everything to 11 to use the Spinal Tap reference.
Nice, that's cool. I think there's something special with using visuals, and it takes it to another level, obviously. But I also find too, if I'm like exploring and sound designing, the visual suddenly becomes like kind of like a destination for the sound in a weird way. Like it becomes what I'm trying to create a musical background for. And I find that just inspiring, that it's just another like thing to like kind of tease the creative juices out of my brain.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some
what would
really
that place sound like.
I've got some eyeballs up close that warp, and got my dogs sleeping, but they bend in weird ways, and it's definitely Willy Wonka through the tunnel type stuff. It's not the fun and pretty stuff. It's the stuff that you see in the tunnel.
I like that. That's fun. I've used for live purposes Resolume, where that's and then synced up through MIDI. And basically the way I had it set up was that as I launched clips, like say a scene, I'd have a MIDI clip just kind of tucked away in there, and that would send MIDI to Resolume so that the clips would change with the scene. And then all of my audio effects on, say, like my APC 40 are also mapped into Resolume effects. So if I do a filter, then the visual also changes too.
That's pretty awesome.
And it becomes like this like interesting immersive thing. Almost it's almost like when you put two mirrors together and they go on for infinity. Just the way that the music feeds into the visual, and that feeds your music, and then it inspires more music. It's just I found that to be, and it almost didn't matter what clip I put in there. Just anything that I could film would be interesting as it reacts to the music. I think that the youth are spoiled now because they see things like what you can do with Ableton and a few apps and things, and they don't realize it wasn't always like that. To do what you're talking about right there, you're doing it in your computer with a couple of programs. You're using Ableton Live to trigger this stuff and everything. Back in the day, this had to be done with serious hardware, and it cost a lot of money and stuff. So we're living in amazing times. If you can do so much now. And things that just were out of the reach of mere mortals. You had to actually, hit a certain level where you could afford this stuff. You mostly needed like a big Hollywood budget behind you.
Exactly. So it's so exciting to be living in this time right now with all these goodies, and Ableton Live. I mean, man, Ableton Live is the gift that keeps on giving, because even after you get under the hood, there's another hood, and then there's another hood, So they're doing a good job out there in Germany.
Yeah, I gotta say, it's almost every time I use it where I'm like, ooh, that's cool. I could try that, and then it's the stuff I'm already really familiar with, just a new way to use it. Teaching the class that I teach for Berkeley Online, there's people coming up with new ways to do old things, and it's always a surprise the way, anytime you get around someone that's using it, they're doing something different that you either didn't think of or didn't know you could do. And I love that about it. There's
so adaptable. That's why I love Ableton so much. There are people that are Cubase, and there are people that are this and people that are that. But I think when it comes to digital audio workstations, you find the one that works with your personality more than anything else, because they're all ways to put music down. to get music out of you.
At the heart, they're doing the same thing.
Right, but Ableton fits my personality. I think we Ableton users, we're an interesting bunch of people because we are the we are the tinkerers, we're the fidgeters, we're the ones that want to make our own reality. We don't make our music, we make our own reality through Ableton Live. So takes a different kind of person. That's why some people can't wrap their heads around it. Some people, but to that note, I tried Cubase before I got with Ableton, and back in the day. When I first started making anything, I actually I'm not a pirate any longer, but back in the day I was a pirate, and I used to have Sony Acid, and then from there I went to Cakewalk, and then I tried Cubase. I couldn't really get into Cubase, and then I landed on Ableton, and been happy ever since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got similar journeys and similar morally questionable computer activities behind
let me give a PSA out there to those people that are still in the pirating business. I never made a decent track until I stopped pirating and I put my money down, because then I stopped looking for another program to do something and I actually learned the program I was using.
I'm pretty much exactly the same with you, because I was into plugins and whatever, all the DAWs, you want to try them all out, and you wind up just downloading things. You wind up just tinkering, and you don't really get to know anything. It wasn't until when I really knew I wanted to start playing some of this electronic music live, that, or at least play some of the studio recordings is maybe a better way for me to put it, play those live, that once I got to using live, I decided it's the most stable when I'm only using live devices, because once you start mixing up with cracked third-party plugins, you run into issues that you get your crashes. So it was that really got me to just kind of get rid of all that stuff and learn the program and just learn it. And I think that's something that we don't do as much these days with all the gear that's around, all the software. Nothing's quite as precious as it used to be. Like you said, if you had your 5500, EMU sampler or your 808 drum machine back in the day, like you were going to learn that.
Oh, yeah.
Because even if you didn't like it, you weren't going on eBay to sell it for something new.
Right.
You had to learn it. You made it work.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is for me, it's a big roadblock in my creativity, is that I'm very tempted by all the new gear. And nowadays, I mean, that's a great or terrible time to be a synthesizer lover, because there's a new thing that's really awesome coming out all the time. And you can really find yourself just kind of picking up new stuff and never really mastering anything.
Yeah. And that... Well, we talked about, there's all kinds of music snobs. We talked about even our own little snobbish tendencies, right? And in electronic music, this is a big one. You're going to find we make all our own sounds versus people that use the stock sounds.
Right.
And I liken that to, if I need a sound and it doesn't exist, I'll make it. If I need a sound and it does exist, I will use it. And each situation is different. And I like to put it out there. I'm like, back in the day, you had a piano. That piano was a piano. When you hit the keys, you got piano sound out of it. And then you have a guitar, and a guitar is a guitar. Now, don't get me wrong. You can put effects on it or what have you. You can change your amp, but you're still going to get a guitar sound out of it. It just may be mangled. Right. It's a preset.
Yeah.
So, these days, if you need something and it doesn't exist, learn how to make it. If you need something and it's right in front of you, then don't let the need to make something short circuit your need to create, because a lot of times you'll go down that rabbit hole. It's sort of like when you go on Wikipedia and you see an interesting article, and then you click on a link in the article, and then that one has a link or even maybe two links. And next thing you know, you've wasted an entire evening and you just filled your head with useless pop facts of some type because you went on you went on the wormhole. Yeah, you went down the rabbit hole.
Browser.
Exactly. And so seriously, that's the way I look at it with the synthesizers. If there's something I want to hear and I'm not finding it, then I'll make it. But if there's something I want to hear and somebody else made it and it's there and it has no royalties attached to it and it just happens to be a preset, I'm going to go ahead and use it. So that I'll just It'll be my piano. No matter what the sound is, it'll be my piano.
I'm trying really hard to move myself in a direction where there's like, who cares about like all this stuff, whether it's a preset, whether it's a loop, whether it's a sample pack, whether it's auto tune, whether it's quantized, whether it's something you clicked in with a mouse or something you played with an instrument. That's usually not the point.
Yeah.
The point is the music. How does the music move you? How does it feel? Sure, there are, if you're going to maybe a concert and watching somebody play a guitar beautifully is nice. But, let's see, now I'm going to contradict myself. I mean, there is something special about seeing like just a great musician, hearing a great singer. But I think there's just so many reasons for music. So, you can have that. You can have just a great track that was made all with Apple loops.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with that?
Yeah. Well, I one of those shifts I've been working on to get myself away from the little one must have saw the rabbit outside or something. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've gotten away from is in trying to expand my mind on these things is I've come to the mantra that there is no bad music. There's only stuff you don't like.
Yes.
Because we're very narcissistic with the internet now, and we all feel like we have this voice that everybody needs our opinion. They don't need to want our opinion. They need to have it no matter what. So typically, hey, stop. So instead of saying, "Wow, that's just not my cup of tea," people tend to jump to, "Oh, that shouldn't even exist. That's just crap." It's just
yes,
and it's really not. Just not your cup of tea. That's really what it is. If one person is a fan of that person's music, then that person has a reason to be making music, even if it's only themselves. If them making music, if they're, again, it's that thing. There's a lack of sound in this space and nobody's filling it with what I want to hear. So I'm going to fill it with what I want to hear, and that's what we do as musicians. We fill these gaps with stuff that nobody's heard before. Hopefully there's a lot of lawsuits happening these days with, with sampling and stuff, but hopefully you're filling a space with something that won't get you sued. So
sure. Yeah. And sometimes it's just the process of making the music, just going through it. That's important.
Yes.
And it reminds me, as I'm now doing Hamlet with my English students, a quote where he says, "There's not good or bad in a thing, but thinking makes it so." So things are just things, but it's when you think, that's where the good and the bad judgment comes in. Mm-hmm. And what you think is good, I might think is bad. And it's not either. It's just where it is, and it's perception. It's what's in your head.
Yeah, and here's a tip for people out there. You don't have to listen to me because I'm not an expert on anything, but this is true. Don't really get too rigid in your opinions, because the thing you don't like today is going to bite you in the butt, because 10 years from now, you're going to love it. Because we change all the time.
I'll give you a personal example. When I was a kid, I just really, and it's funny now that I'm saying this because I think back, I liked certain hip hop and things like that, but I didn't like drum machines. It was just, I wanted a real drummer.
Yeah.
And maybe that for the kind of music I was making, yeah, that's true. But it definitely, I guess, prejudiced me against a lot of other music that was really good. And here I am, I'm drooling over certain drum machines that have just been released. I've got one on my desk over here. I'm building drum machines inside of Ableton Live, and I love them. They're wonderful, but it was just this stupid thing that it wasn't, the drum machine have no soul kind of nonsense. At the same time, though, a lot of the music I'm listening to is sample-based hip hop and, some of the rock that had, it tapped into that stuff. I was just too dumb to realize it, and had some stupid rule that I guess maybe when you're young, you're trying to identify yourself and draw your line in the sand. This is who I am. That's probably really where that stupid mindset came from.
Well, when you're young, I see it now that I'm around a lot of youth. I mean, through the museum, I'm de facto in the education industry now. And now bringing my workshop to the high schools and stuff, I'm technically in the education field now. I'm not an educator, but I'm working in that realm. And I see a lot, and I know I was exactly the same way. kids do. They make rules on how life is or how life should be. And the great thing is, as you get older, is you kind of don't have any rules anymore. You just throw that out. You just get rid of it, because every rule that you have is a reason to be miserable, because you're going to break it. And when you break it, you feel bad. And then you're like, I'm not living I'm not living how I should be. And there is no should be. I mean, I have this little speech, and it's not musical, and I'm gonna try to condense it because it can get really long-winded. But being in the museum field now, in the science museum field, I've seen so many images that the general public may not see from NASA. And one thing that's always gets me is when you see the Earth from space and you realize just how thin our atmosphere is. It's gossamer thin. It's like a little green haze on this planet. So you think about it, and our planet is just hurtling through space. We have no control of it. There's no steering wheel, right? And we're sharing all this space with all kind of stuff that could hit us and turn us and do us just like the dinosaurs did. And then on one side of us, we have this incredible ball of fire that's just big enough to hold us in place. If we were any closer to it, we'd be too hot and we would not exist. If we were any further away from it, we would be too cold and we would never have existed, right? But we're perfectly right in that zone. On the other side, we have Jupiter. We have other planets, but Jupiter's the other one that really affects us. It pulls us away from the sun, and it also eats a lot of the things that would normally come and hurtle into us and hit us. So it's like a protector back there. It's helping to keep us right exactly where we need to be, because just a degree shift closer to the sun or further away from the sun, not only would we not exist, we would have never existed. And when you start thinking of things in that term, we're hurtling through space. We've got the gossamer thin atmosphere keeping us alive. We've got these two gas giants. One's on fire. The other one is just a huge planet that are holding us locked in place in the only place in the universe where we can actually live naturally without being in spacesuits and things like that. The only spot in the whole universe that we can actually live. And yet we focus on the most trivial of things. When you think about it like that, it's like technically we shouldn't even be here, and yet we still fight wars. We still find reasons to separate us from every other person, or we find ways to. Could you please stop? Thank you. No, thanks. There's a rabbit in our yard right now, so
I'm
sorry
just
about
glad
that.
It's not my dog this time, because it's usually mine. They're usually the ones.
So she's breaking up the serious moment here, but I mean. Whenever I think about that, now I tell people that are really stressing out about kind of small things, and understand I'm not making a value judgment. Some person's small thing is another person's mountain, right. But I'm not going down that far as say you're wrong for feeling that way. No, you feel how you feel, right? But man, we really shouldn't even be here. It's monumental. All of the things that could happen that we have no control over that could make us not be here anymore. It's just it blows my mind, seeing those images. That's what those images bring to me. It's like we really shouldn't take everything so damn serious.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think maybe our modern man is a lot less connected to that than past generations, just because of light pollution, where we just don't see the stars as much as we used to, and we're not as connected with that idea that we are of rock hurtling. We're not even a rock. We're not even a grain of sand hurtling through the universe.
Well, I've got a sad story for you. Talk about light pollution. So 2 years ago, I was tasked by the museum to go and get a cicada sound for a ringtone for one of our events. So I'm like, I grabbed my H4n, my Zoom H4n, grabbed a parabolic mic, and I took off to a place I thought was very quiet.
You have a cool job.
Being in that place that I thought was quiet, I start getting the sounds. Then I go to make the ringtone, and I've got an airplane in it. I've got a car horn in it. So again, I'm like, okay, try 2. I go further out into the quiet. Same thing. I never got a clean recording. That is how much noise we make as a society. In a place where I'm one with nature here, I'm getting airplanes and cars and motorcycles in on my recording. I ended up having to take the parabolic mic off and just use the internal mics on the H4n because it's not as focused and discerning. I was able to not hear it as bad, and I was able to filter some of that stuff out, and we ended up with a nice little cicada ringtone. But man, that's kind of sad, It's like I'm going out to the areas where I'm like, okay, society and modern life is not going to affect my cicada recording here. And it did.
That is pretty incredible. It is hard. I did a little pack a couple years back with ambient sounds, and I actually asked people to just wherever you are, record a sound and just send it. And some people were in the office, some people were outside, and it's kind of cool. And I don't know, maybe there were like 20 sounds that I went up getting, and 5 of them were probably mine. But it was somebody commented on my I was trying to get the same thing as you. Well, no, I was trying to get the crickets at night. Mm-hmm. And somebody like commented, there's the roar of the highway that I know so well being on Long Island. Yeah. And it's like true. Yeah, it's there kind of constantly.
And we have actually learned to filter it out. Yeah. I had headphones on, but I didn't hear it while I was there. But then when I listened back to it in my studio, man, it was inescapable. And the only thing I could think of is we're just so used to it being there. It's sort of like, I don't know, in modern times now, when the power goes out and you actually have no sound in your house, it's freaky. But you think, man, that must have been so peaceful to sleep back in the day before they had electricity and all that. And the only sound you would hear is whatever's happening outside your house, the crickets or whatever, or a bear,
right?
Trying to use your outhouse. I don't know what that sound would be, but I just know that we're so, like, even when it's quiet in the house, it's not quiet. And you can tell because when the power goes out, that's quiet. Uh-huh. And there's a big difference between silence when your power is on and silence when the power is off. Big difference.
True. So true. Yeah. I've I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second, just thinking about silence. I'm sorry, it's gone. I had something really monumental and powerful to say, but there it goes.
Oh man. Hope I didn't.
No, you got me. It was just interesting stuff that just, to go to what you said about the pictures though that you see on my desktop on my computer, I have a photograph of it's the horizon of Mars from the rover. It just came out, I don't know, a year or two ago maybe. And from the horizon, there's this little tiny speck. It's like 1 pixel on my screen. And it's Earth from the surface of Mars. And I look at that and I think, I'm like, on that little speck, every human being that has ever lived, every problem I've ever had, every species, every dinosaur, everything in our history all happened on that little tiny speck. And from Mars, it's a pixel on my screen.
Well, we had Drew Fustel in the museum 2 years ago. Drew Fustel is an astronaut, and he gave a talk in the museum. And he was showing pictures that he took, but he also showed pictures from the first moon landing. And man, I cannot believe this name is escaping me. I know who was on the moon, but I can never remember the guy who stayed in the capsule. I can never remember his name. Forgive me.
Not Buzz? I don't know. I'm not going to guess. I'm just.
But anyway, it was the guy that stayed. It was the guy that stayed back in the capsule, right? Uh-huh. So while the moonwalk was happening, he took a picture from the capsule. The moon was in the picture, so the 2 astronauts on the moon were in the picture. And the Earth was in the picture. And that picture right there, he was the only person that has ever lived that was not in that picture. That's mind-blowing.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
He took a picture, and he was the only human in the entirety of human existence that was not in the picture. Every human that has ever lived and died was in that picture except him.
Right.
See, that's the kind of thing that's like big concept things that kind of like put day-to-day stuff kind of into place for me a little bit,
Oh, yeah. That helps me. I mean, sometimes it freaks me out, but it does when you can do that, you can kind of say, okay, traffic isn't so bad today.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the little blue marble story I gave earlier, how we're hurtling through space, we're held in place and all. And then you think about that kid came up to me and he's like, but you did C harmonic minor and E major in the same song, Yeah. And, I probably did something even worse on that day, but you know what? It's all right.
Yeah.
We're hurtling through space, buddy. Anything can happen to us.
It's pretty cool we even have C harmonic minor and E major.
Yeah, exactly. Look. In a few years, we'll go to more tonal music, and we won't even have scales, man, because we're going to be playing in the portions between the notes, man. We're going to be like Asia, Everybody's going to be like Asia, man. Don't even worry about this.
Crazy. I want to do this on this show here. I want to kind of ask a question or two that I can ask everybody to sort of gather a collective wisdom on the topics. So one of the questions, maybe this isn't wisdom, this is just nerding out, but do you have a like kind of a deserted island piece of gear that like the one thing you would, and you can have electricity, and maybe I'll take out the laptop. We can just assume you can record it if you want to. But is there a particular, it could even be like an individual instrument but a particular piece that is the one thing you would take?
Well, I'll give you my actual real answer because I have a real world answer to this, but then I'll give you a musical answer too. My real world example is something that I carry around with me every day. On my chain, I have a chain around my neck. You can see this. They can't. It's a magnifying glass. People think I carry this because I can't see. It does come in handy to see things. But I carry this around with me because the one thing, if you're out in the wild, you need food, shelter, and water. And this magnifying glass can give you fire, which will make food and water palatable for you out in the wild. So everywhere I go, this is my survival gear. So I actually carry that. I carry my gear. I carry my deserted island gear with me every day. It's a magnifying glass because that can help me get 2 of the 3 things I need to survive. So that was my completely rational answer that has no, anything to it.
Okay.
But now my musical answer, it would be my iPad because with Aria Studio on there and with GarageBand and with Korg, the Korg gadget, and then with all the instruments I have on there, I don't have to use Ableton Live to create music. I can literally do everything I need to do. And I actually have one release called the iPad Sessions Electro Mess. And those 3 songs, it was an EP, I did from start to finish on my iPad.
Oh, cool.
I recorded everything in Korg Gadget. Then I exported the tracks into Aria Studio for mixing and all that. Then, I have a mastering plugin that the name is escaping me right now. But from start to finish, let me see. I don't think I'll kill this if I look at it real quick. Hang on, let me see. So I recorded in Korg Gadget, and I don't want to launch it. No. Don't want to touch that. No, come on now. Work with me, computer, iPad. Okay, so I recorded in Gadget. I then brought everything into Aria Studio for mixing and adding a couple of little instruments to it. And then the mastering plugin that I have is called Final Touch.
Okay, that's a good name for it.
Yeah, and I did that start to finish on the iPad. So yeah, that long-winded answer. That would be my deserted island gear because I wouldn't be giving up anything. I guess it would be nice to have a solar charger too, but you did say one, so.
Well, we'll assume you have electricity somehow.
Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. So I can keep it charged. I can keep making music. Now this does go kind of into the thing. I guess if I have an iPad, I go, well, no, I would need Wi-Fi. So it's not like I could use the iPad to get off the island. So yeah.
Well, maybe you're just the only person left.
Yeah. There you go. One of the little blue marble scenarios came out, and somehow I survived.
Yeah, that's it. And the other one I want to ask you, and I haven't been super consistent with this. I think I've only done it like twice. But is there anything, whether maybe it's like it could be anything, a work habit or a mental state that you think contributes to the success you've had with your work, with your music? Anything, like maybe there's like a nugget of wisdom we can pass on to me.
I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but my life stopped being as complicated, and I started being able to get more stuff done when I stopped playing by the rules. And I don't mean breaking the law or anything. I mean internal rules. Like, you can't have breakfast for lunch. You can't have breakfast for dinner. And that's just an example that some people may have, like, no, you can't have eggs for dinner. That's breakfast food. But we all make our own constructs, because every one of us, we think we're in this shared version of life, right? Mm-hmm. But your version of life is nothing like my version of life, even unless we're doing something together. Like right now, this podcast, this is our shared version of life, shared vision of life. But our day-to-day habits, it's kind of like when you go see people's house and you're like to people's house, and it's like they just do something a little different than you, and you can't help but notice it because you're like, they're doing that wrong. No, they're not. They're just doing it the way they do it, right? So when I was younger, I was very rigid. I was very angry. I was very rigid, and that held me back from a lot of stuff. Because I'm 48 now. I'm approaching 50, and I'm doing the things now that I should have done when I was in my 20s. But the rules kept me from doing all of that stuff. Yeah. And I so cared what people thought about me back in the day. That was another one of the things. I was a people pleaser. I was an angry people pleaser. Can you understand how hard that is to be? An angry people pleaser. There's like emotions coming at you from all different angles all the time. So call it wisdom, call it whatever you like. But as I get older, to keep this clean, I have just stopped giving a bunch of F words about things, Yeah. I've just let that go because life's going to happen no matter what. So why try to guide it? We're kind of like the little blue marble thing too. We try to guide our life, but man, we're tossing around in the wind here, right? Henry Rollins gave an interview once to Pharrell, and he said one of the most mind-blowing things to me. That not to me, he said it to everybody that listened to the interview. That was a bad way of wording that. But Pharrell asked him, he to paraphrase, he said, you were a musician and spoken word artist, and you're an author, and you're now an actor, and you do all these amazing things. And the question was sort of the fact, like, how did you get into all this? What? And Henry Rollins' answer was the important part, and he says, I'm not really all that good at anything that I do. So I found over the years, all I can do is work all the time and say yes to everything that comes my way. And hey, we'd all love to be Henry Rollins, right? I mean, so I've tried to do that. I've tried to say yes to more things. I've tried to instead of try to steer things and make rules on how things should be, I kind of let things play out, and I don't stress about them as much. And doing those shifts over the past 15 years or so. Another one is the whole, there's no bad music. There's only things you don't like. It's that attitude shift over the last 15 years that has allowed me to now get a job doing amazing things with music and sound, and allows me to have my little record label here, Reaching for Lucidity, and release my music and the music of my friends on my label and stuff, and it's just, it makes life easier. It greases the wheels, I find, to have that attitude, or to try to have that attitude, because never ever going to completely stop caring or stop pleasing people, or, you're always going to have a rule or two. The one thing about us as humans is we're always hypocrites. You just don't want to be a horrible hypocrite, right? Like you said earlier, I'm kind of contradicting myself. Yeah, we contradict ourselves because also, none of us are as smart as we think we are. It's like, we have our moments, but in general, life is going to happen. We're not controlling it all that well. So, might as well just flow, stop trying to be the master of the ship, and just be good to other people, be good to yourself, make beautiful things, and share it with people.
That is a great answer. I'm glad I asked you that question. I think it's a hard thing to notice the rules sometimes. To notice that you are putting these restrictions and boundaries on. Sometimes they're like just these invisible bars we put up. We don't even see them. And
totally.
Recognize them, I think, is half the battle sometimes.
Yeah. Self-awareness is very powerful. But self-awareness takes work. It takes looking at the mirror. And sometimes you look at the mirror and you don't like what you see. So it's easy to not want to be self-aware. Yeah. But self-awareness is that thing you kind of have to keep at it, because that's when you start to realize just how integrated we are. We're here on the planet, and with nature and with everything. You start to see your place in it at that point. And like I say, be nice to people, be good to people, make beautiful things, share that with people. It's so easy to be nasty and mean and miserable in your life. You don't have to be. Try not to be.
That's a great point. Maybe a great place to leave too.
All right.
Be good, be happy.
Yeah.
You don't have to be miserable. I love it.
Yeah.
Really, really good answer. And the fun thing to think about, where you're putting up your own boundaries and how you're limiting yourself. And the possibilities are endless if you are able to open yourself up to them.
Definitely.
That's cool. Eban, thanks so much for this conversation. I really got a lot out of it. I really enjoyed it. You're doing awesome work. It's really fun to hear somebody that's got, I guess, like, I don't know, a grown-up music job, maybe is a way to put it. Like,
that's a good way to put it, yeah.
It's a really, really cool position you have. You're doing helpful things, not just for music, but for science, and it's a great application of your talents. So, bravo to you for that. I love it.
Thank you.
So
it is a good gig.
Yeah, we'll get a lot of these links in the show notes for people to see, because there's a ton of interesting things to check out. A lot of homework to do now.
All right.
So thank you so much for taking the time to talk.
You bet, man. It was a blast.
Thanks. So thanks to Eban Crawford, Senator Jaiz. We had a great talk, and hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, and that you'll tune in next time to the Music Production Podcast. Thank you.